By the next morning, Zerath Prime had changed. The story of Dax and the princess was everywhere. Every news channel showed the moment Dax quietly walked out. Headlines called it the silence that shook the stars. Cafes were full of people, arguing about what it meant. Even the city's young people, who were usually busy with their games and friends, talked about Dax on their way to school. In the Grand Assembly building, members of the Galactic Council gathered early. Some looked worried. The human ambassador leaving without a word could cause problems, maybe even another conflict. Others were curious. They wondered if this simple act could lead to something new between the humans and Zerathians. The Emperor met with his advisors, trying to plan the next step. He wanted peace, not more problems. "Why did your daughter insult the human?" one advisor whispered. "What if Dax will not come back?" another asked. But Princess Talira was having her own problems. She sat in her large, fancy room, staring at the city below. She had never been ignored like that before. Usually, people tried to argue or talk back when she insulted them, but Dax's silence was different. It made her wonder if maybe she had misunderstood humans. Her maid, an older Zerathian woman named Mira, entered quietly. She offered breakfast, but Talira barely touched her food. "What do you think of humans, Mira?" Talira asked. Mira was surprised. "They are not so different from us, Princess. They feel pain. They love their families. They build great things." She paused. "I think some are wise, like your father, and maybe the human ambassador." Talira thought about this. She remembered how calm Dax had looked, how he had not even frowned or shown anger. She had tried to make him feel small, but instead, she was the one left thinking about her own words. Meanwhile, Dax sat alone in the human embassy. His two assistants, Lila and Tamar, argued in low voices behind closed doors. Lila said, "We cannot just let this go. We need to ask for an apology." Tamar disagreed. "No, if we complain, we look weak. Maybe Dax is right." "Maybe silence is better." Dax heard them, but said nothing. He spent the morning reading messages from other human diplomats. Most were supportive. Some worried that he had made humans look weak. Others said they were proud of him for showing patience and dignity. As the day went on, news about the incident kept spreading. On the planet's largest social network, a young Zerathian student named Nell posted a drawing of Dax walking away. Underneath, he wrote, "Real strength doesn't need to shout." The post went viral. Soon, thousands of Zerathian and human teenagers shared their own thoughts. Some said Talira had gone too far. Others said Dax was a coward. But for the first time, people from both sides were talking honestly about respect. Late that afternoon, a group of Zerathian university students organized a small event in the city square. They invited both humans and Zerathians to speak about their cultures. A human woman shared stories of growing up on Mars, and a Zerathian boy talked about learning human music. People laughed together, and even the local news reported on it. Something was changing in the air. Back at the palace, the Emperor received a message from the Galactic Council. They asked if Dax would attend the next meeting. The Emperor called for Talira. When she entered his office, the Emperor looked serious. "You have always been brave, Talira. But sometimes, being brave means listening more than speaking." Talira nodded, feeling embarrassed. "I did not mean to make trouble. I thought he would argue, not walk away." The Emperor smiled kindly. "You are young. You will learn. Now, I want you to visit the human district. Listen to their people. Understand who they are." Talira hesitated. She had never been to that part of the city before. But she agreed. That evening, she wore a simple cloak, hid her royal marks, and slipped out with her guard. The human district was nothing like the palace. The streets were crowded with shops selling Earth food and old Earth music playing from small speakers. There were children playing in the street and adults chatting in front of stores. Talira watched as a group of humans worked together to repair a broken hover bus. They laughed, joked, and helped each other, even inviting a Zarathian neighbor to join them. Talira was surprised by how normal everything felt. She walked into a small cafe and ordered tea. The server, a human girl, smiled politely. "First time in the district?" she asked. Talira nodded, careful not to reveal who she was. "Yes, I'm just curious." The girl poured the tea and said, "Most Zarathians only come here for business, but you seem different." Talira listened to people talk about their lives. Some missed Earth. Some loved Zerath Prime. One older human spoke about how hard it was after the war, but how things got better when Zarathians and humans started working together. "At first, we didn't trust each other," he said. "But we learned. Now, my best friend is Zarathian." The princess finished her tea and left, her mind full of new thoughts. On the way home, she saw a young human boy and his Zarathian friend playing together, building a model spaceship. They argued, then laughed, then helped each other. That night, Talira wrote in her journal. She wrote about the people she met, about the stories she heard, and about her own confusion. For the first time, she wondered if Dax's silence was a lesson for her. In the embassy, Dax sat in a meeting with Lila and Tomar. "There will be another council session soon," Lila said. "They want us to attend," Tomar added. "And we received a message. Someone from the royal family wants to meet you privately." Dax looked surprised. "The princess?" "No," Lila said. "Her father. The emperor himself," Dax thought. For a moment. "I will go, but not to fight. Maybe this is a chance to build something new." As the next day arrived, the city was still buzzing with talk of Dax and the princess. In markets, people drew pictures of the moment. In schools, teachers used it as an example of self-control and dignity. Even in the royal palace, the emperor spoke with his advisors about what peace truly meant. The Galactic Council prepared for their next meeting. They invited delegates from other planets, hoping to avoid any misunderstanding. Some wanted strict rules about what could be said in public. Others wanted open conversation. But everyone agreed on one thing. Things could not go back to the way they were before. The morning of the meeting, Dax dressed carefully, choosing a simple suit again. He walked slowly to the assembly hall, nodding to people along the way. Some smiled. Others watched him in silence. When he entered the hall, even the guards stood a little taller. Talira was already there, sitting next to her father. She glanced at Dax, but he did not look back. The emperor greeted everyone warmly, then called the meeting to order. Dax waited quietly until it was his turn to speak. When he stood up, the entire hall fell silent. "Words are important," Dax began, his voice steady. "But sometimes what we do matters more. I am here not to fight, but to listen. We have all made mistakes in the past. Let us not repeat them. Instead, let us build something better together." There was a long pause. Then, to everyone's surprise, Princess Talira stood. She spoke clearly, her voice soft but honest. "Last night, I saw humans helping Zarathians in my own city. I saw friendship where I expected none. I realize now that I have much to learn." Her words echoed through the hall. For the first time, people from both sides began to clap, quietly at first, then louder. The emperor smiled at his daughter and nodded at Dax. After the meeting, news of Talira's speech spread even faster than before. Some called her brave for admitting her mistake. Others said the galaxy was finally ready for real change. Princess Talira woke up early the next morning, feeling nervous for the first time in her life. She had always been so sure of herself, so quick with her words, and so proud of her royal blood. But now, after seeing how Dax handled her insult, and how her own people and even her father reacted, everything felt different. She walked quietly through the palace halls, past servants and guards who bowed their heads, pretending not to notice the worried look on her face. Outside, the city of Zerath Prime was waking up, the sky painted with soft blue and gold colors. The air was cooler than usual, and the sound of delivery drones mixed with the faraway hum of the assembly building. In the breakfast room, the Emperor was already waiting. He sat alone at a table, sipping hot tea and looking over news reports, on a floating screen. He glanced up as Talira entered. For a moment, neither spoke. "Sit with me," the Emperor said gently. Talira sat down and poured herself some tea. She could feel her father's eyes watching her. The news was still full of her speech and Dax's silence. Some reports praised her for admitting her mistake, while others said she had embarrassed the royal family. The Emperor put down his screen. "You did well yesterday," he said. "It takes courage to admit when we are wrong." Talira looked down at her hands. "I still do not understand, Father. Why did Dax not answer me? Why did he just walk away? Was it because he was afraid?" The Emperor smiled a little. "No, Talira. It is not fear. Sometimes people who are truly strong do not need to prove themselves. Dax showed everyone in that room what it means to have dignity and self-control. That is not weakness. That is real power." Talira thought about this. "But what do I do now?" The Emperor leaned forward. "If you really want to understand, you must spend time with the humans, not as a princess, but as a person. Go and see how they live, how they work, what they hope for. Only then will you know." Talira nodded. The idea made her nervous, but also excited. She finished her tea and stood up. "I will do it, Father." That afternoon, Talira changed out of her royal clothes and wore a simple tunic, like any young Zarathian woman. She wrapped her hair in a scarf and walked alone, with only a small guard drone following at a distance. She took a transport down to the human district. The human district was busy and colorful, filled with food stalls, music, and laughter. Humans and Zarathians walked side by side, shopping and working together. The smell of fried bread mixed with the sweet scent of Zarathian flowers sold by street vendors. Children of both species played games on the sidewalks, their laughter echoing down the street. Talira wandered slowly, watching everything. She saw a group of human builders fixing a broken roof. Instead of arguing, they joked and sang while they worked. A nearby Zarathian shopkeeper joined in, handing them tools and water. Nobody seemed to care that they came from different worlds. Talira entered a small bookstore. The owner, a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes, smiled at her. "Welcome. Looking for something special?" she asked. Talira shook her head, pretending to browse. She picked up a book about Earth's history. The woman noticed. "That's a good one," she said. "I came here from Earth many years ago. Sometimes I miss home, but Zerath Prime is good to us." They talked for a few minutes. Talira listened closely as the woman described how hard. It was at first how some Zarathians didn't trust humans and how some humans felt lonely so far from Earth. But things got better when people started sharing stories and food. "Now," the woman said, "I think of this city as my real home." Talira thanked her and left, feeling thoughtful. She kept walking and stopped near a small park where a crowd was gathering. There, Dax was speaking to a group of young humans and Zarathians. He stood in the center, dressed in plain clothes, telling stories about the early days after the war. "We were scared," he said, "but we learned to trust each other step by step. Every time someone chose kindness instead of anger, we grew stronger together." The young people listened with respect. Talira stayed at the edge of the crowd, not sure if she should say anything. But then a little girl, a Zarathian, recognized her and called out, "Princess Talira!" Everyone turned to look. Dax noticed her too and nodded politely. Talira felt embarrassed but smiled at the girl. Dax gestured for her to join them. "Would you like to say something?" he asked. Talira hesitated, then nodded. She stepped forward and looked at the crowd. "Yesterday, I said something unkind. I thought that would make me look strong. But now I see that real strength is listening and learning, not just speaking loudly." She looked at Dax. "I am sorry for my words." The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. Dax smiled. "Thank you, Princess. That takes courage." Afterward, Dax and Talira walked together through the park. "You did not have to say sorry," Dax said. "But I am glad you did. People notice these things." Talira asked him, "How did you learn to stay so calm?" Dax shrugged. "I have seen too much fighting. I learned that not every battle needs to be won with words. Sometimes the best way to lead is to show patience." They talked for a while, sharing stories about their lives. Talira found herself laughing at Dax's jokes and feeling relaxed for the first time in days. Later, they sat on a bench and watched the sunset. The sky was full of pink and orange colors, and the city lights began to glow. Talira asked, "Do you think humans and Zarathians can ever truly be friends? Not just in public, but for real?" Dax looked thoughtful. "I think we already are, at least some of us. The rest will take time. But today was a good step." As the sky darkened, Talira felt hopeful. She thanked Dax and returned to the palace, her mind busy with new ideas. That night, she wrote in her journal about her day. She wrote about the bookstore owner, the children playing, and her conversation with Dax. She realized that she had much more to learn, not just about humans, but about herself. In the human embassy, Dax also wrote a message to his family back on Earth. He told them about the princess's apology and the way the city was changing. "Maybe," he wrote, "we are seeing the start of something new. Maybe peace is possible after all." The next morning, news spread quickly about Talira's visit to the human district and her public apology. For the first time, headlines were hopeful. "Princess bridges divide," one said. "A new era for Zerath Prime?" asked another. Even in the Galactic Council, people talked differently. Some old enemies shook hands. Young diplomats, inspired by Dax and Talira, planned small cultural events and joint projects. It felt like the city was waking up after a long, cold night. Back at the palace, the Emperor called Talira to his study. He was smiling. "You have done well," he said. "Today, the Council wants you and Dax to work together on a new program. It will help young people from both our worlds learn and travel together." Talira's eyes widened. "Me? With Dax?" The Emperor nodded. "You started something. Now you must help it grow." Talira accepted the challenge. She knew it would not be easy, but for the first time she felt excited about the future. For the next week, Princess Talira's days changed completely. She was no longer just the Emperor's daughter or the clever speaker from the assembly. Now she was the royal who had apologized in public and had visited the human district not as a ruler, but as a learner. People everywhere talked about her. Some still doubted her new attitude, but many more were hopeful that something real was happening. Even her younger siblings asked her questions at dinner about the humans and their food, wanting to know what made them laugh and why their music was so catchy. One morning, Talira received an official message from the Galactic Council. She had been chosen, together with Dax, to create a youth program that would bring human and Zarathian young people together. The idea was simple but powerful. Students from both sides would spend time in each other's schools, live with families, and work on projects that mixed their cultures. If it worked, it would help a whole generation learn trust and respect. Talira was excited but also nervous. She was smart, but she had never built something like this before. She wanted to do it right, not just for her own honor, but for the future of both worlds. She called for her advisor, Mira, to help her make a plan. Mira, the wise old Zarathian woman who had served the royal family for decades, smiled as Talira explained the project. "This is a good thing, Princess," she said. "But remember, real change happens slowly. You must be patient with others and with yourself." Together, they started making a list of ideas. Talira decided to invite Dax to the palace gardens to discuss the project. The gardens were famous for their bright flowers, peaceful pools, and gentle floating lanterns. It was the perfect place for an honest conversation. Dax arrived that afternoon, dressed simply as always. The guards and servants bowed, but Talira greeted him with a friendly smile. She led him through winding paths lined with glowing plants and tall, ancient trees. For a while, they simply walked in silence, enjoying the soft sound of water and the gentle breeze. Talira finally spoke. "I want this program to succeed, Dax, not just as a show for the council, but so people can really know each other. Will you help me?" Dax nodded. "Of course. I think you are the right person to lead it, Princess. You know both sides now. People listen to you." Talira looked down. "I am still learning. When I insulted you, I was wrong. I was proud and did not want to understand humans. But now, I want to do better." Dax smiled kindly. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." They sat on a low bench under a tree. Birds with silver feathers hopped near their feet, looking for crumbs. Talira explained her ideas: cultural festivals, shared classes, and team challenges that would push young people from both worlds to work together. Dax added his own ideas, such as friendship circles, group projects, and even sports matches. As they talked, palace staff watched from a distance. A few quietly took pictures and short videos. No one had ever seen the princess and a human leader working so closely before. Dax noticed the staff but did not mind. "Let them see us working together," he said softly. "It will help others believe in this too." They spent hours planning. When the sun began to set, Talira called for some food and tea. They ate simple bread, sweet Zarathian fruit, and small earth candies Dax had brought from the human district. Talira laughed as she tried a sour candy and made a funny face. In that peaceful moment, Talira realized how far she had come. Only a week ago, she would never have sat in the garden with a human, sharing food and ideas. But now, it felt right. After the meeting, Talira and Dax wrote a report for the Galactic Council. They called the project the New Bridge. The plan was clear and full of hope. Young people would travel, learn, and create together. Every year, more students would join, spreading understanding across both worlds. When the council saw the plan, most members were impressed. The Emperor was especially proud. "You have made history, Talira," he said. "You and Dax have shown everyone that peace is not just words in a meeting. It is something we must build every day." The news spread quickly. Journalists from every part of the galaxy came to interview Talira and Dax. On screen, they spoke about their partnership and the lessons they had learned from each other. Talira told the story of her mistake and her journey to understand. Dax spoke about forgiveness and the strength of quiet courage. Young people everywhere felt inspired. Applications for the New Bridge program poured in from all corners of Zerath Prime and Earth. In schools, students talked about visiting each other's homes. Teachers created lessons about human and Zarathian history, music, and art. Even the city's musicians began to mix styles, creating songs that used both earth drums and Zarathian flutes. But not everyone was happy. In some parts of the city, a few old leaders muttered that things were changing too quickly. They remembered the war and still feared that differences could not be trusted. One night, Someone painted angry words on the wall outside the human district. "Go home, humans." The next morning, local children covered the words with flowers and bright pictures of hands shaking. Dax and Talira visited together, taking photos with the children and thanking them for showing kindness. Back in the palace, Talira met with her siblings and told them about the project. Her youngest brother, just 10 years old, asked if he could join too. "Someday," Talira promised, "when you are older." As the program's first day approached, both Talira and Dax felt a mix of nerves and excitement. They had worked hard, but now everything depended on the students. Would they be friends? Would they fight? Only time would tell. On the opening day, hundreds of students and their families gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. Flags from Earth and Zerath Prime hung side by side. Dax and Talira stood together at the front of the room, each giving a short speech. Talira's voice was steady as she spoke. "We come from different worlds, but we share the same hopes. Today, you are the start of something new. You will show the galaxy that friendship is stronger than fear." Dax added, "We cannot change the past, but we can shape the future. Together we can build a world where respect and trust are the true laws." When the speeches ended, the students cheered. Teachers guided them into groups, mixing humans and Zerathians together. The first activities were simple: games, art projects, and music. But soon the room was full of laughter and new friendships. Outside, the news drones flew above, sending pictures and videos across the galaxy. Families on both worlds watched, with pride. Even the old critics found themselves smiling at the sight of children working together. That evening, Talira and Dax walked in the garden again. The stars shone brightly overhead. Talira felt proud, but she knew the journey was not over. There would still be challenges and misunderstandings, but for the first time, she believed real peace was possible. She turned to Dax and said, "Thank you for helping me see the world differently." Dax smiled. "You helped me too, Princess. Sometimes, even a quiet walk away can lead to the best kind of change." The next weeks and months brought a new feeling to Zerath Prime. The city, once full of tension and old wounds, now felt like a place where anything was possible. People of both worlds started to see each other as real neighbors, not just guests or strangers. The new bridge program grew quickly. At first, just a few hundred students took part. They went to each other's schools, lived with host families, and worked on projects that mixed their cultures. They cooked together, made art, and even put on a play that told the story of Dax and Talira's first meeting. For many, it was their first real friendship with someone from another world. They laughed at how different some things were. Earth's pizza tasted strange to Zerathians, and humans needed time to get used to floating beds and glowing fruit. But they also discovered how much they shared: music, jokes, dreams for the future. Every week, Dax and Talira met with the students. Sometimes they listened quietly as students shared stories about home, about being nervous, about learning something new. Other times, they helped solve small problems. Once, two students got into an argument about a game. Instead of yelling, they remembered Dax's silence, and after a deep breath, they worked it out calmly. The teachers noticed this change in attitude spreading. "You don't always have to win with words," one teacher said. "Sometimes listening is the strongest answer." The program's success spread far beyond the city. Families from other planets sent messages asking if their children could join too. The Emperor and the Galactic Council smiled with pride as news reports showed humans and Zerathians working side by side, building robots, planting gardens, and organizing concerts together. A group of students even built a small spaceship as a team. On launch day, the ship carried flags from both worlds and a message for peace. In the middle of this excitement, Talira changed in ways no one had expected. She was no longer just the Storm of Zerath or the princess with the sharpest words. Now she was known for her kindness and curiosity. She visited human families, asked questions, and tried new things, even learning how to make earth tea, though she spilled it the first few times. She listened more, smiled more, and helped others who felt unsure or left out. Dax, too, became more than just a symbol of calm strength. He was a mentor and a friend, especially for students who felt nervous or shy. He reminded them that everyone made mistakes, but what mattered was how they fixed them. Dax still liked to walk quietly through the city in the evenings, but now people greeted him with respect and friendly waves. There were still challenges. Sometimes people from the old days tried to stir up trouble. A few times someone would shout an old insult on the street, or a group would refuse to join in the new programs. But each time, something different happened. Young people from both worlds stood together, calmly saying, "That's not who we are anymore." The crowd listened, and the troublemakers walked away, feeling small. One afternoon, the Galactic Council hosted a special event to celebrate the first year of the new bridge. The assembly hall was full again, but this time the air was full of excitement, not worry. Banners from Earth and Zerath Prime hung from every wall. Students displayed art projects, paintings of humans and Zerathians holding hands, models of shared cities, and poems written in both languages. The Emperor stepped onto the stage. His voice was warm and proud. "1 year ago, we saw anger and silence in this very room. Today, I see hope and courage. My daughter, Princess Talira, and Ambassador Dax have shown us that peace is not a gift. It is something we must work for every day." He turned to Talira and Dax, inviting them forward. Talira spoke first. She told everyone about her journey, her mistake, her fear, and how much she had learned from meeting humans face to face. "I once thought respect meant being the loudest voice. But now I know it is about listening and being open to change. I am proud to call many humans my friends." Dax spoke quietly, but everyone leaned in to hear him. "When I walked away that first night, I did not know what would happen. I only hoped that silence would give us all a moment to think. Today, I see that sometimes the quietest choice can start the loudest change." The hall burst into applause. Even the old critics wiped away tears as they watched students from both worlds step onto the stage to share what they had learned. One human girl said, "I was scared when I came here, but now Zerath Prime feels like home." A young Zerathian boy added, "I thought humans were just stories, but now my best friend is human. We play music together." Later that day, Talira and Dax walked through the garden where their partnership had truly begun. The trees were full of bright blossoms, and the air was sweet with the smell of blooming flowers. Birds with silver feathers flew overhead, singing new songs that seemed to belong to both worlds. Talira sat on the same bench as before and smiled at Dax. "Do you remember when we first met here?" she asked. Dax laughed gently. "I remember you were not sure about humans at all." "And you said almost nothing at all," Talira replied, shaking her head in disbelief. "That was the best thing I could have done," Dax said. "Words can start a fire. Silence sometimes brings rain." They watched as a group of students passed by, 2 humans and 2 Zerathians, chatting and laughing. One student stopped to wave. "Thank you for helping us become friends," she called out. Talira waved back, feeling something light and happy in her chest. "I used to think power meant winning every argument," she said softly. "Now I see it is about building something that lasts." Dax nodded. "And being brave enough to admit when you're wrong." As the sun set, the city below them glowed with 1,000 lights. Far away, a spaceship from the new student team rose into the sky, carrying young dreamers from both worlds. They were on their way to a new school, one built for humans and Zerathians together somewhere far out in the stars. In the days that followed, more families joined the new bridge. More cities planned their own programs. Even the artists and musicians started new projects together. Old stories of war were slowly replaced by stories of teamwork, laughter, and hope. For Talira and Dax, the work was never truly finished. There were always new problems to solve, and sometimes old fears returned. But now they faced these things together, surrounded by friends and students who believed in a better future. And so, the silent walk that had once shocked the galaxy became a legend, not just about a princess and a human, but about how two worlds changed by choosing respect, patience, and friendship. It was a story told at bedtime, in schools, and at celebrations, always ending with the same lesson.